Hello, good afternoon, Sosa and everyone else live today. I'm so excited to be back. Sosa on Talks with Sosa. I'm sitting here enjoying a cup of coffee and just really excited to be back and having followed your journey and your speakers over the last little while. And so much has happened in a year. I am so grateful to be back and talk to you and your viewers today about your theme of choosing to challenge. And I thank you so much for the introduction, because one of the things I want to talk about today is how life for me really has changed, and how a big challenge for so many of us is being defined by our job, defined by what we do. We go into situations where we connect with people, we meet with people, and immediately one of the things that comes up in our life is that, what do you do? What do you do for work? And I have been an automotive journalist for almost 20 years. And luckily, I've been hosting a show on global national television, and I have a little bit of a fan base and a following. But with life, it definitely started with discovering a brain tumor a couple of years ago and going through that process. And then, let's be honest, a year ago, encountering COVID-19 and the shift on the entire planet of how we see things, that I've really had to stop and take a minute and look at myself and look at who I am and what I want to be doing in the world, and think, is the definition of what I do for work and how I'm showing up for everyone else in my life really and truly who I am, who I want to be, and who I want the world to see me as? And as you mentioned in my overview, that I struggled with depression, I struggled with anxiety, and a lot of people do. And what was interesting for my journey was that I was going through counseling, I was meditating, I was doing all of these things that we are supposed to do. Anyone watching right now knows that as soon as you have anxiety, as soon as you have depression, we're told to do these things. We're told by our doctors, from our therapists, that, we need to be doing all these things. And a big piece of this for me through my meditation and through my work was really just trying to connect with, who's Lacey Lee Elliot? And I think that we all struggle with this challenge every day. And again, to bring it into something a little bit more relative, is COVID-19 has forced a lot of us to relook at our family connections. It's forced us to look at our jobs, how we make money. And it's really challenged all of us to just stop and think, is this who we want to be? Is this how we want to show up? Is this how we want to live our lives? And as much as probably the worst experience of my life was having a brain tumor, I cannot think of any worse information that someone might get. Luckily for me, the tumor was not cancer, but it was a horrific nightmare of fear, of stress, of just words I actually cannot describe. But looking at it now, May will be 2 years that I have been clear and healthy, and the tumor's been gone. It really pushed me, and in a weird way, don't get me wrong, I have my bad days where I'm angry and I hate my tumor. But there are a lot of days where I also am really thankful and grateful to have had such a challenge, such a struggle, such a thing in my life that has forced me to have to change direction. And I think what's interesting, as I'm getting older, I say this slowly and a little hesitantly because I'm 40, and I never thought that that would be an issue. But as I've been struggling to reinvent myself because of a tumor, I've been struggling to reinvent myself because of how I'm looking at my life. This year, I'm also looking at it going, well, wait a minute, I'm starting to get a little older and my body is different. And again, going through a tumor my mind has been different. My thought process has been different. My memory has been different. And the challenge and the struggle that I've been faced with recently is this from a tumor? Or is this something that just, I'm starting to get older, things are starting to change? And again, it's really had to pull me back into a place in my life where I've had to challenge everything I thought I knew about who Lacey Elliot is, and shift that as I sit here and listen and share with you is actually who Lacey Elliot was. And what I've realized is, as much as I love automotive and I love the, I say in air quotes, job of being an automotive journalist, that was never who I was. But yet for 20 years, 18 years, that job was how I defined myself. And so many of us do that. You're a nurse or a police officer, or some job defines us and how we show up. And for that to suddenly be taken from us, whether it's a tumor, whether it's COVID, we have to stop and look at who we really are and what really brings us joy and how we want to show up for the world. And so what I really hope to share with all of your listeners and with you today, Sosa, is the challenge every day is to show up for ourselves, to show up in a foundation, in a place of power that makes us happy, not our spouses, not our friends, not our family, not our coworkers, but fundamentally ourselves. And that has become such a challenge that I know that I've struggled with. And the more I've been talking about my struggles and my challenges, has become so many other people's challenge. Who are we? What do we want from life? What makes us happy? What gives us passion? And trying to disconnect from the definition that society sees us. And in a bigger picture, the job of how we've made money, of how we showed up for so long, doesn't actually need to define us. One of the most important tools I've discovered that I really want to pass on to the listeners is something called Strength Finder. And if you just go and Google Strength Finder, it is an amazing book. And it costs about $30. You take a quiz, and in return, it tells you what your strengths are. And what I love with this little book and this little tool is the idea is these never change. So if you do this when you're 20, these are strengths fundamentally of who you are and how you show up in the world. And what I love with it is that not only does it give you some ideas of work, because again, that is a big thing of in our lives, but it also gives you ideas of how you can use this in your daily life. And so just for an example, the one thing that's really, two things that stood out with me with the Strength Finder that I did a couple of years ago. One of my strengths is communication. And so this is great when it comes to work, but it's great for me to be able to sit here in front of your audiences and attend things like Toastmasters and be able to speak and share my story and really connect with people. But another one of my strengths is something that they call woo, winning others over. And it was interesting because never in a million years would I have thought of winning people over as being a strength. But when I think about wanting to inspire and motivate other people through my journey and my experiences and my story, the idea of being able to be a strong communicator for my work, but also for social media and for friends and for family, and also to win people over. These are some really interesting strengths that I can put into all aspects of my life. And I think what I really, Sosa, want to leave with your viewers today and with you is the challenge of not defining ourselves based on what we do. The challenge of not defining ourselves in social circles based on how we make our money, because that isn't necessarily who we are. And some people are lucky that they get to go to a job every day that really fulfills a part of their soul. But we can get up in the morning and figure out our strengths, figure out our passions, figure out what lights our soul on fire. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what we do for work. It doesn't necessarily have to be how we make money. Not all of us are lucky enough. And I really just want to challenge everyone to take some time, whether you are someone who meditates or someone who goes to the gym, someone who, whenever you're doing something that you love, take a moment to think about how you feel in that moment. Think about for that moment how you feel being away from the definitions that society has given us or work has given us, and really connect with what makes your soul happy and what lights who you are on fire. Because it doesn't have to be what we've been told for the last, well, for me, 40 years of my life. And I hope that for most people, it's not going to take something like a brain tumor to kind of shake you and wake you up. The world as we know is changing. And as much as most of us really dislike COVID and really have some horrible things to say about what's been happening the last 12 years, the amazing thing right now and the challenge I have for everyone is that we're in a time in humanity, we're in a time right now where we're allowed to reinvent ourselves. We're allowed to figure out who we are, because as the world is changing, we get to change as well. And that is what I'm hoping to inspire and challenge your audience today to do, is to reinvent yourself and look at this time in history as a place to be different, be something else. You don't have to go through a major life crisis or something really terrifying like I did to be able to get up and look at who you are and create yourself. That's all I've got for you today, Sosa. And I know you are not doing any questions with your audience, so thank you for having me. And hopefully I've left some inspirational thoughts and ideas with you and with your listeners today, because I always love having conversations with you, and just whatever I learn from the people in your circle and the people in your life. And I'm excited to see, as the months and years come, the challenges that you're going to be taking on with your brand and your Talks with Sosa. And I'm super excited to see the future for Talks with Sosa and be a part of it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thank you so much to everyone that was online today. Just get up tomorrow and live your life for you and figure out what makes your soul happy.
Thank you, Lacey. You never fail to share your story, which is so empowering. Thank you.
Cheers.